I was just reminded, and I almost forgot. Thank you all for joining us this evening. This is a joint meeting with the Yakima School District Board of Directors and the Yakima City Council. Due to things that have happened for the past couple of years, we haven't been able to do this for a couple of years now. And I'm so excited to be able to have our friends from the City Council join us for this joint meeting. In the past, it has always been quite helpful to have this partnership between the City Council and the board and between the city manager and our superintendent, because, you know, we are the biggest, the two biggest within the city. And so we're very happy to have you here. We will be we are live streaming and recording this meeting for both organizations. The Yakima School District will be showing this on our YouTube channel, and it will be up probably by the middle of next week. And we are also live streaming for you all live stream too, right? Mm-hmm. So for both of us, we are live streaming. So hopefully the two live streams are going to join together and not collide. So there will be opportunity for public comment toward the end of the meeting, and we welcome members of the public to speak to either the city council members or to the board. Pat, could you shut that, please? Thank you, Ryan. And so we will start with a call to order and a reminder to all of the members here who have microphones to speak into the microphone. They are not live unless you push the button to make them live, because we do need to capture what's said. We encourage you to take advantage of the microphones. I don't think that we will have feedback with so many microphones in the room, but in case we do, just be aware that you might want to turn it off when you're not speaking so that you're not caught in a live mic moment. Okay, so before the pledge, I'm going to let you, Janice, call your council members to order.
I call the August 29th, 2022 special meeting of the Yakima City Council to order. City Clerk, roll call, please.
Brown.
Here.
Byers.
Here.
Cousins.
Here.
DCO.
Here.
Herrera.
Here.
Macias.
Here.
And Lund is absent.
Thank you. The council is pleased to be here at the Yakima School District Central Services Building for this joint meeting with the district's board of directors. The council is looking forward to tonight's presentations. So the first presentation, well, do we want to do it?
We have to do the pledge.
Yep.
Okay. And before we do that, I'm just going to ask Barb to do a roll call for the board as well.
You bet. Director Ryan Beckett,
Present.
Director Norm Walker,
I'm here.
President Martha Rice,
Here.
and Directors Raymond Navarro Jr. and Vice President Graciela Villanueva are excused.
Thank you. And we are very pleased to be able to introduce to you a Davis student who will lead us in the pledge. Principal Hasty is here. Yes. Could you introduce your student to us, please?
This is Alexa Guzman. She is a senior at Davis High School, and she is our senior class president. She has a lot of interests too. She works a lot with her church. She's been playing clarinet since the 5th grade. She's amazing. She's in band. And she has an older sister who just graduated last year. Yes, 2 years ago also. And so here she is.
Alexa, whenever you're ready.
Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Alexa. Do you want to share with us any plans that you have for this year or what's coming next year?
Plans for this year. Well, currently right now I'm in marching band, so I'm just kind of doing that most of my time. We are working on our show, and then we're gonna get that on. We're gonna perform next week at the football game, and then from there I'm planning on doing wrestling. That's my favorite sport. And
Wrestling.
then, yes, wrestling. And in middle school I wrestled boys too, so that's kind of cool. But now
Good
it's
for
just
you.
girls. Yes. And then from there, the whole year I work with my church, so that's just kind of like year round all the time. And then after that, well, I'm a full IB candidate too. I'm gonna start testing in like May, April, kind of, and then I want to do track as well. I did that before too, so I think that's pretty much it. I don't know what I'm gonna do in the future for career-wise. I'm still figuring that out, but I'm gonna go to college. So.
And
Yeah.
so my question to you is, do you plan at all to sleep this year?
Do I play to sleep?
Do you plan to sleep?
Plan to sleep. Last year I didn't get much sleep, but I did try my best. It's really hard with marching band because it's like that's when I started full IB like last year, and then I had marching band, and then I had like other stuff for school like ASB, and then all of that. So it was really hard to manage my time, but I find a way to work it out, so it works. Yeah, I do sleep. Yeah.
Oh, Alexa, thank you for being with us and
Thank you,
taking time
guys.
out of your very busy schedule.
Thank you.
Good luck, and we'll look for you in June. We also have a land acknowledgement that the school board opens every meeting with, and so I'd like to read that for you this evening. Today, the schools of the Yakima School District rest on the ancestral lands of the 14 confederated tribes and bands of the Yakima Nation. The people of Yakima Nation inhabited more than 12 million acres across Adams, Benton, Chelan, Douglas, Franklin, Grant, Kittitas, Klickitat, and Yakima counties. Today, we honor those native peoples who are tied to the land through history, legends, and culture. We acknowledge their descendants who live in the world today. We thank the caretakers of this land who have lived here and continue to live here since time immemorial. An acknowledgement is a simple, powerful way to show respect and a step toward correcting the stories and practices that erase Indigenous peoples' history and culture. It also honors the truth. As a school district, we will continue to build upon our relations with the Yakima Nation. So now we will move directly into our agenda. Do you want to introduce your people?
The first presentation tonight will be about the Yakima Youth Leadership Program. Yakima City Attorney Sarah Watkins will introduce this item.
Thank you, Mayor and School Board and City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to come tonight and discuss the Yakima Youth Leadership Program. I'm going to have, I'm already messing up the microphone. I have with me a number of people to present as well. They include Danielle Fleming from YSD 105. She is an education advocate who worked in the program. Juliana Van Olfen is our researcher for our program. She's been with us for 3 years. She is a professor at San Francisco State University. And Nancy Carmona is her assistant. She is a doctoral candidate at the University of Washington. And I also have Emily Nelson, who is with ESD 105, and she is the student support director. So, I'm very reliant on the PowerPoint. Okay, so this is a quick agenda of what we're going to talk about tonight. And
Let me just fix that really quickly. I apologize.
so first, I wanted to give you a very brief summary of the history of the Gang Reduction and Intervention Task Force because it kind of started the Yakima Youth Leadership Program. It was created through proviso money from Governor Inslee, who gave us money to develop a sustainable, organized response to gang activity and youth violence. So it created a steering committee, which has a representative from the school district as well as representatives from the city council. They provide a strategic oversight and have also completed a 5-year strategic plan to address gang and gun violence among the Yakima community members. The other piece is the village. It is essentially the stakeholder coalition. They meet regularly for education, networking, and training. And the goal of the village is to help build capacity and collaboration amongst service providers and other stakeholders within the Yakima community to address gang violence as well as prevention, suppression, and intervention strategies. So the third prong is the Yakima Youth Leadership Program. It is a program in the 4 Yakima School District middle schools. There is an education advocate assigned to each of those middle schools, and it is for 6th graders. And the reason we chose 6th graders was the stakeholders group did a number of listening sessions and spoke with experts, and they decided that for a prevention and suppression program, it would be most beneficial at the time of the decision to work with 6th graders, as that was a time where their decision making could be enhanced to make good decisions rather than joining gangs. And so that is really the purpose of the leadership program as a whole. So Danielle Fleming is going to talk more about the actual curriculum of the Yakima Youth Leadership Program. The curriculum was provided in your packet, so you could see a copy of it. But she actually has worked directly with some of the students and is going to talk about that.
Good evening. Danielle Fleming, education advocate. I was at the Lewis and Clark Middle School this year. As an education advocate, we worked with the 6th. Sure. Okay. Thank you. So as an education advocate, we worked with the 6th graders and with the administrators. The counselors were very helpful in referring the students to us. And so we have a curriculum that we put together to build skills. We know that, working with this, the youth was going to be somewhat of a challenge since they were just coming back in person and it was a whole new setting and just becoming acclimated to like a middle school environment and going to many classes. So it was really great to work with them. The students responded really well to the skill building because it was really about building rapport and talking with them and being with them and walking with them. And they really appreciated that as well as the family members. So we build skills on communication, on relationships, really educating them on what the difference is between intimidation, bullying, and harassment. So their ideas were obviously different than the definition. So it was really great for them to gain a lot of information and awareness. They talked about some of their concerns and fears. So as the relationship built, they became more open and disclosed, personal things and things that they really wanted to receive support for. So it's really kind of challenging to get them to say, I need help. So that was a big skill for them to utilize and get rewarded for. So that was a great piece to work with the youth and the administration, because we did incentives and rewards, and they seemed to respond pretty well. And, they're reaching out this year too, like emailing like, hey, are you here today? So those relationships across, all the schools seem to have worked in building those relationships and hopefully those skills, because we know that, it's a practice. It's not something they're going to just, get and, woohoo, they got it. It's going to take some practice because they're faced with a lot of challenges. Okay, thank you.
So I probably should have mentioned how this program was funded at the beginning, but this program was funded through a federal grant. So all of the salaries, the equipment, and everything like that was funded through the OJJDP grant that the city of Yakima received due to the partnership with the school district as well as ESD 105. So as part of that grant, we hired a researcher to do data collection and also evaluate the program at certain intervals. Since we're at the end of our 3-year grant period, we have our researchers here to discuss the findings. They are Juliana Van Olfen and Nancy Carmona, who I already introduced. So I'm just going to have them come up here and provide the information that they've garnered from all of the data we collected.
Do we advance with this? Thank you for having us.
Thank you for being here.
All right, so let's get started. So the evaluation objectives that we're going to be presenting on today are reducing the number of Yakima Youth Leadership Program youth at risk for joining gangs, reducing disciplinary issues experienced by program youth, increasing youth school engagement and desire to learn, and increasing resilience of the Yakima Youth Leadership Program youth. So just a brief description of the method. So how did we evaluate these objectives? Well, we evaluated these objectives using survey and school outcome data. And this was collected by the education advocates at the start of term 1 and the end of term 2. So we'll be presenting descriptive information about who participated in the study, information from the baseline surveys, and this will help us understand students' behavior and perceptions before completing the program. And we also conducted statistical tests to determine if the program had an impact on the risk of joining gangs, school outcomes, and resilience. So for this analysis, we compared the survey and the school data at the start of the program, and that's where we're going to be referring as the baseline, and after the completion of the program, and we'll be referring to that as exit. All right, so first, youth demographics at baseline. We had a total of 61 students who completed the baseline survey. We did, however, have several students who completed the program remotely and didn't have a chance to complete the exit survey. So we had a total of 42 students who completed both the baseline and exit survey. And the education advocates also collected school outcome data for 33 students. Now let's see if I can use this. Nope. It's going. I don't want to blind myself. There we go. All right. All right, so we wanted to note that most of the students who participated in this program were male, and most of the students were also Hispanic. And the mean age was around 11.5 years of age. Students experienced substantial challenges as a result of the COVID pandemic. Here we have a lot of different data, but I wanted to point out a couple that I thought were particularly interesting. So here we had that at baseline, 34% of the students had a family member or a close family friend who was diagnosed with COVID. At baseline, we also had 21% of students who had a family member or a close family friend who suffered a severe health impact as a result of COVID. And in addition, at baseline, 28% of students had a family member or a close family friend who died as a result of COVID. We also collected some information about parents or guardians in the study. We had a total of 21 parents who completed this baseline survey, but not many parents completed the exit surveys, and we know that the education advocates were really focusing on fostering those relationships with the youth. So just to note some of the demographic information here, most of the parents were Hispanic, and about half of the parents had less than a high school education. And we also wanted to note the income. So most parents had a household income less than $50,000. And I also wanted to get some context here. The median household income in Yakima City is about $48,000 in 2020, while the median household income in Yakima County was $54,000 in 2020. And parents also experience substantial challenges as a result of the COVID pandemic. All right, so there's a lot of information here, but I wanted to know a couple of these. So 34% of parents lost their job. 21% of parents had their hours reduced at their job. 23% of parents had trouble paying bills. And down here, 28% of parents had to borrow money to pay for their bills. All right. We also wanted to note the financial and food insecurity among families of students in the study. We had most of the parents were reporting that they always or sometimes were worried and stressed about having enough money to pay for rent or mortgage, and that's 59% of the participants. And a lot of parents were also worried or stressed about having enough money to buy nutritious meals, with 32% of parents reporting always or sometimes. Right, so now we're going to delve into our findings on gangs, and the figures below are showing baseline and exit survey, like I noted, and the baseline data, we're going to have it in blue, and the exit survey data is going to be here in orange. So these figures here are reporting what percent of students reported not at all true or not very true to several statements. So I'll start here on the left. So at baseline, about 71% of students did not perceive that there were gangs at their school, and this increased to about 72% or 73% at exit, excuse me. The second statement here, at baseline, about 63% of students did not perceive that most kids join gangs, and this increased to 72% at exit. And last here, at baseline, about 68% of students did not perceive that there were gangs in their neighborhood, and this also increased at exit. So overall here, we found that at baseline, students had negative perceptions of gangs, and their perceptions of gangs got more negative as they completed the program. Next, we have a couple more statements here. So now we're reporting what percent of students reported very true or sort of true to various statements. So again, here we'll start at the left. So at baseline, 60% of students perceive that kids join gangs to feel that they belong to something, and this slightly increased at exit. Next, at baseline, about 88% of students perceive that joining a gang could be dangerous, and this did not change at baseline. At exit. And our last statement here, at baseline, about 64% of students perceive that kids join gangs because their friends pressure them, and this decreased slightly to 60% at exit. So again, overall, we found that students had negative perceptions of joining gangs. We didn't see a statistical change in these, but I think it is promising that students maintained or slightly increased their negative perceptions towards gangs. All right, and another figure here for gangs. So we're reporting here on students ever participating in gang behaviors. Sorry, it's a little small here. So here on the left, only about 9% of students in the study reported ever helping or doing a favor to someone that they know is in a gang. And again, only about 9% of the students in the study reported ever being in a gang fight. So overall, very few students reported engaging in gang behaviors, and this did not change at exit. All right, so now passing it over.
Thank you, Nancy. Love to see This is how you advance, right? Okay. All right. There we go. So I'm going to continue presenting some of our findings, and we looked at a variety of school outcomes, including disciplinary events among students involved in the program. We also looked at absences and tardies. So this figure right here is showing at the 4 middle schools. The purple is baseline, the orange is exit. And you can see there was no sizable change in disciplinary events except at Lewis and Clark. But I need to point out that there was one student who had 15 disciplinary events at exit. And so that student represented an extreme outlier. So that's why it looks so extreme for Lewis and Clark. The data on absences and tardies was fairly similar, not a significant change between baseline and exit. We did also have a couple students at Lewis and Clark who were outliers with a lot of absences and tardies. And I think Danielle said that in at least a couple of those cases, those students had arranged to actually do remote learning because of other things going on in their lives. So this slide shows youth academic engagement. And if you look at the bars on the far left here, and second from the left, as well as on the far right, let's see if I can, I lost the pointer. There were slight increases in the number of youth reporting they liked school, they tried hard to do well in school, and that grades were important to them and that they listened carefully in class. However, you can see sort of on the whole, when you look at all of these statements reflecting academic engagement, that there were modest changes in most of these indicators of academic engagement. So the YYLP really focused quite a bit on online behavior and helping, kids, as Danielle said, to develop better skills in terms of how they interact with others online, and helping youth to be more mindful of how they present themselves. And you can see on the far left here, there was actually a notable increase in the number of youth who reported being careful to make sure that the pictures they post or send to others would not embarrass others or get them into trouble. So it was 78% at baseline and then 90% at exit. So that was a real positive outcome. Otherwise, there were no real significant changes in students' preferences for online spaces where people are nice to each other, or in students presenting themselves online as someone making positive choices. Oops, sorry. So this slide shows more data on students' online behavior. And I'll focus on, there was a slight increase in youth reporting that they think about things they say online. So that's the second, I believe the second from the left. However, if you look at the other statements, the one on the far left and then the two on the far right, for all those statements, we actually saw slight decreases in positive online behavior. So now we're focusing on self-regulation skills among youth participants, and this shows the percent of students who responded very or sort of true to the following statements. You can see some of the statements are things like, I wait my turn in line patiently, I keep my temper when I have an argument with other kids. And there was little change from baseline to exit, except slight increases in the number of youth who agreed they wait my turn in line patiently, keep my temper when I have an argument with other kids, and follow the rules when nobody is watching. There was, however, a small decrease in the number of youth who felt they could talk to an adult when they had a problem. And this could simply have to do with natural changes among youth of this age, where their focus and interest tends to turn more toward their peers and away from adults. I think that's very typical with middle school youth. So I wanted to share some of the challenges in the implementation and evaluation of the Yakima Youth Leadership Program. So as you saw from the data we shared earlier, it's important to keep in mind that the implementation of this program coincided with the pandemic. There have been many national studies documenting the negative impact this pandemic has had on youth. Our data showed that COVID took a toll on families involved. Youth lost friends or family members lost jobs, and faced financial and food insecurity. The YYLP likely provided some safety for youth and buffered them against especially negative academic and social outcomes. But I believe that the pandemic probably explains why we didn't see more positive outcomes as a result of the program. The program was also difficult to implement remotely because of access issues. So in the first year, it was remote, and there were challenges with internet access, enabling the EAs to meet with youth remotely. There were also challenges getting in touch with youth and parents. And then, as we all know, building relationships online is always more difficult. Pivoting back to an in-person program then was also challenging. The education advocates, youth, and school staff were all making big adjustments during this time. So I think the key takeaways are that our statistical analyses didn't really detect significant changes in key outcomes between baseline and exit. However, as Nancy indicated, most youth had negative perceptions of gangs and positive social behaviors at baseline, and these did not change that much by the end of the program. Also, the fact that there was little change in many indicators may indicate a protective effect of the program against the negative impact of the pandemic on their academic engagement and social behavior. If we had had a comparison group of similar youth who had not been part of the Yakima Youth Leadership Program during this time period, we likely would have seen better outcomes in our program youth as compared to youth who were not part of this program. So the key lessons I believe that we learned is that youth involved may need more time with education advocates than anticipated. And indeed, many of the EAs said that youth really wanted to maintain their connections to the education advocates. It's also generally quite challenging to see strong program effects after a short-term intervention. And a program like this needs to be sustained over time to have more impact. Emily Nelson with the Educational Services District will be talking about the ESD's plan to continue this program despite the end of the grant. And so again, I've kind of said pandemic, but I do want to say that this is an incredibly challenging time for many across the nation. And I think the challenges brought about by the pandemic may have masked the true effectiveness of the program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I don't even think I need a clicker. Let's see here. So my name's Emily Nelson. I'm the Student Support Director over at ESD 105. Thank you for having us here tonight to share about the Yakima Youth Leadership Program. Obviously, some of the data associated with the program didn't have the outcomes that maybe we had hoped to see. And some of that is to be suspected. I do want to introduce some of our team that's here tonight as well, too. Jose, if you can stand up. Jose was our education advocate at Franklin. And Bettina, if you'll stand up. Bettina came on a few months ago and started at Washington and has been a great EA there, too. You guys already met Danielle, and then Patty Moreno couldn't be here tonight, but she's stationed at Wilson. Thank you all. And then Amanda Rodriguez is also here with us tonight, and she is our lead education advocate and does training and support for our EAs. So with the outcome data that we're looking at and some of the things we learned through the last 2 years, I'm not sure how many of you did a job change during the pandemic, but I also, not to say pandemic again, since we said that a lot tonight, but both Jose and Patty, just to give you a vision of where this all started, were hired over a Zoom interview, and I never met them face-to-face till they had worked for us for a full year. So if you can imagine getting your first year of training and having it be 100% online and then trying to engage with youth you've never met before online as well, it obviously presented some unique challenges. What we do know, however, from the other parts of our education advocate program that has been going on for over 15 years and works under title funds through OSPI and through the state, is that we learned through this program, and one of the biggest pieces of feedback we got from administrators and counselors was the need to broaden the reach of the program. One of the restrictions that we had under this program was that we could serve sixth grade youth. And so we had sixth graders who were going into seventh grade during this time frame who we would have loved to continue services. And we think we maybe would have had a longer term impact if we wouldn't have been able to do so. So with the new funding, as of Thursday, September 1st, our 4 part-time education advocates will continue to be stationed in the middle school. We will actually be increasing their hours from 10 hours a week to 15 hours a week, so they'll be able to have more contact within the schools. Additionally, they'll be able to serve 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students, which I think will be beneficial across the board in order for them to be able to maintain those long-term relationships. The other shift within the programming, too, is that our general EA funds don't highlight and focus specifically on gang involvement. Oftentimes within prevention science, we know, we have substance abuse counselors that are stationed in many of the Yakima schools as well, too. And oftentimes what they go in and talk about isn't necessarily substances. What they come in and talk about is building strengths within the young person, finding safe, supportive adults, recognizing protective factors in their lives and helping to build upon those things. And so we believe with the shifts in the program, where the funding is coming from, and just a little different highlight and focus, that we'll be able to see some changes and impacts over the years to come, where we'll be working on those protective factors and strength building with our youth at the middle school level. So I do want to thank Trevor and his administration team. They attended monthly meetings with us through this process and engaged and allowed us to come into your district. So thank you very much for that. Thank you to the city of Yakima and YPD for helping engage and be partners in this project as well, too. And I think we've built some really cool partnerships out of it, and we'll do a lot of great things for kids in years to come.
Thank you, Emily.
So I guess I would just add that this wouldn't have been possible without the partnership with ESD and the Yakima School District. And so again, we want to thank you for that. And if you have any questions for any of the presenters, we're happy to answer them as you wish.
I do have a question. So this was over 2 years, if I'm understanding correctly. So were there 2 separate groups of students, each one at a 6th grade level, that went through?
Yes.
Okay, which I think that, I know it may have been disappointing to see the minor adjustments, but I think that your assessment of the fact that they wanted to stay involved afterwards says a lot. And I also believe that that having to work remotely was as challenging to the students as it was to you. And I think those are huge factors. I think that moving forward, we'll see a lot more progress. And I think we're all pleased with that. So thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, the next presentation tonight will be about the Handle with Care program. And Superintendent Green will introduce Yakima School District Director of Safety and Security, Sarah Cordova, and City Manager Bob Harrison will introduce Yakima Police Lieutenant Chad Janice to introduce this item.
Well, thank you. To the right, you can see that we have Sarah Cordova. She is our Director of Safety and Security and has just been a stellar find in this position. She had previously served as an assistant principal at Washington Middle School, and I believe that you were at an elementary, predating my time here. So her expertise is deep, and it starts at the elementary level, goes up to the middle level, and now she has oversight over the entire district, not only in our athletics, but of course, this evening we'll be addressing safety and security, and we're excited to hear from her and her colleagues. So with that, I'll pass it over to our city manager.
Thank you, Superintendent Green. With us today, we have Chief Murray as well as Lieutenant Chad Janice, and just want to thank you both. About 2 years ago, we started up this domestic violence coalition. It was pretty fascinating to see. It's one of the most prominent violent crimes that we have in our community here in Yakima. And so with an emphasis on reducing violent crime through excellent customer service, the police department took on this initiative to create a coalition of community members to focus on a whole variety of domestic violence. And one of those partnerships not only for today, but also for the long term that we see as this program Handle with Care. And it's, I think, a wonderful opportunity for our organizations to work together to change the culture of violence that exists in our community and make a long-term impact on changing that outcome for both our youth and for the parents that are experiencing domestic violence. And so with that, I'll introduce Lieutenant Janice to talk about the city's part of that program.
Well, I'm going to assume this is working, and somebody will probably tell me if it's not. Thank you for having me tonight. As City Manager Harrison said, I am Lieutenant Chad Janice. I am the second half of what has become Handle with Care within our community. And how this all began was about a year and a half ago. We decided to really take a different look at domestic violence in the community of Yakima. We knew that we were struggling to make significant progress. And as has already been mentioned several times, we were in the middle of a pandemic, which, as you can probably imagine, when you lock people that are already struggling with traumatic issues within their home, inside of their home, with no opportunity to engage with other places in the community, it, certainly could lead to the potential of increases in domestic violence. That on top of some significant cases that we had come upon over the last few years that really made us take a step back and say, what else could we do? And one of the main things that we immediately identified is how we work with other service providers within our community. One of those being the school. And so if you can imagine this for just a moment, it's midnight, any night of the week. There's a 911 call. It's a family violence call. And for instance, a couple that are struggling with any number of issues within their home. And they also have children that are school aged. And so our police officers, they go into the home, they respond, they do their part like they would do and have been doing for many years and generations of this community. But what has never been formally addressed or meaningfully addressed is those children that are present in that home at the time of the incident. So as you can imagine, you have our police officers there. They're there to do a job, stop the violence, address any criminal activity that's potentially occurring. And where we had fallen short before is never really had a system to address what is the best thing we can do for the children present within that home. So when we started this domestic violence effort that has now become the Yakima Domestic Violence Coalition, one of the very first meetings we had was with the school district and said, what if there was a way to notify the school district every time our officers were in your students' homes when there was a traumatic event like a domestic violence call? And of course, at the time, we didn't quite know that it would turn into this. And we didn't even have this model that you see up on your screen. And we thought, well, it's a really good idea. We need to talk more about this. As the months went on, about July of last year, we met with Spokane, who had been doing this program called Handle with Care, where every time their police officers go to a domestic violence call, they make a note in the system. It creates a report to the school district in Spokane. And so we immediately adopted that. We've been working with Sarah Cordova and her team. And it has been remarkable. And what I think you'll find with some of the numbers that in 23 years of policing, I didn't fully understand how many children are impacted by traumatic events in their home until now. And so now we're in the position of, we have about a year's worth of data. How can we improve upon this? How can we create wraparound services for the children of our community? And this is what we'll show you in the next few slides, is just kind of how the system works. And then I'll let Sarah certainly talk about their part. Is much harder than our part, and then open it up for any potential questions that you might have. So the whole reason we want to do this is we understand that experiencing violence within your home is what's considered an adverse childhood experience. The more those that occur within your childhood and within your life that go unaddressed certainly creates the possibility for physical, emotional, and psychological health issues as life goes on. And so meaningfully addressing those as they come up is the best way to overcome some of the issues that potentially could occur. And that's not to say that all children that have parents that have a domestic violence incident are certainly doomed. It's quite the opposite, in fact. But the more those that go on that don't ever get addressed in a meaningful way certainly creates the potential for other issues later on in life. And so what we set out to do is really enhance the primary care. What was never occurring prior to this effort is law enforcement working with the school district to notify them that, hey, we were in the home of this child. This was the circumstance. This is who it is, just so you know. And that's in essence what the program on our end is. It's a notification system. And then once it goes to the school, which is the probably the first place a child is going to go after a traumatic event. And so take the scenario at midnight, any night of the week. The next social service provider that they're probably going to see is probably going to be in the education system. They're going to wake up, they're going to be expected to go to school. And so a notification only makes sense so that if the child is tired, hasn't done their homework, their basic needs aren't met, if they haven't eaten, there's an opportunity to take care of a lot of those needs within the school environment. And the school is tipped off to, oh, this has occurred. We know our notifications are set to notify both Sarah and myself at 6:15 in the morning before the school day starts. And so we have an idea of any potential issues and we can discuss those. So that's in essence how our system works. It's pretty efficient is a good way of describing it for us. As we create new systems, it's really important that we don't create something that's so complicated that our police officers can't figure it out, or it's just too cumbersome to deal with. And so how ours works is it's a simple notification in what's called our Spellman system, which is our reporting, where all of our police officers do all of their reporting. So their calls come through this system, they write the reports in this system, and so it's all in one place. So they basically, where you see the highlighted area there, it's HWC, that means handle with care. So it's in a circumstance code is what we call it. And so all they do is they've identified the child, and then they go in and put HWC in the circumstance box there, and then it creates this report for Sarah and I to read the following morning. We'll go over some of the numbers. I will kind of point you to the date on this one. And so while most of us were probably having a pretty normal Christmas Day last year, these number of children, I think there's 10 or 12 on that list, had a very different Christmas Day. And so that really kind of brings home what we're trying to do in addressing and the family trauma that exists within our community. And so our goal, of course, is to not have lists like this, and certainly not every day are lists this long. There's been a few days where they're slightly longer, and then we've had those unique days where there's nobody on the list. And that's what we hope to see more of as this program continues. So since everything we're doing is automated, it has allowed us to analyze the data. And so pretty early on, we were probably immediately shocked by the volume of children that were experiencing law enforcement in their homes. About November, we had just over 500. And then as we moved into January, we had over 700 cases. And not all of them, of course, were school age. Not all of them went to Yakima School District. Sarah will have those numbers in just a moment. And then as of about a week ago, we've had a total of just over 2,000 notifications in total since we started this on around September 1st of last year. So almost one full year of use. So that's pretty shocking when you put that into context. And some of these children, as you can see up there on the numbers, we've been in their lives multiple times. We've had 326 that we were in their homes twice. We've had 47. We've been in their homes 3 times in the last year, all the way down into 3 of them. We've been in their homes 7 times in the last year. And so it really puts to context what we're trying to do, trying to address the earliest point possible where there's an adverse experience in their life, and doing that through communicating with the school district, because as we know, and I will submit to you, the safest place for a child to be during those school hours is in a school setting, whatever that may be. And one thing I've learned as a police officer, which I would have never have learned had I not been working with Sarah at the school district so closely on this, is the volume of services that are available to somebody. You just have to get them to the school in some form. And so the programs are there, and as we refine this, and we talk a lot about this, we sit on now what's turned into some statewide boards. And what I can tell you of the about 5 different organizations that are using Handle with Care in Washington State, ours is the most efficient, and we have the highest numbers because our police officers on the front end of this are doing a really, really good job reporting it out to the school district so that we don't feel like we're missing too many of them. To give you an idea of the volume and the type of cases, obviously it's mandatory for our officers to use this in domestic and intimate partner violence cases. So that's why there's over 1,000 in the IPV notification. There's just over 200 in domestic that are non-IPV on down the line. But they're using it, and it's mandatory in all domestic violence situations, and it's discretionary in all others. So our officers are using it for a wide variety of calls where they have identified a child that's experienced something traumatic in their life. And so as you can tell, it's everything from shootings to DUIs to assaults and so on down the line. All right, now I'll pass it on to Sarah.
Thank you, Chad. Can everybody hear me okay? Right. Thank you again for having us this evening, presenting our project with all of you. And as Dr. Green said, I'm Sarah Cordova, and I'm the Safety and Security Director, as well as the Athletic Director for the Yakima School District. And I really appreciate the partnership that we've had this year with YPD and with Lieutenant Janice, because not only have we made a lot of progress with our Handle with Care, but we've also deepened our relationship and our ability to work with one another, supporting our kids and our families together. So it's been a great partnership. How do I move it forward? Okay. So as Lieutenant Janice said earlier, in June of 2021, we started our conversation with YPD regarding the domestic violence project that they were starting, and just started talking about the impact that all of these incidents were having on our families and our students and how we could partner together in this effort. So we spent time talking and looking at things together in August, and in September, we decided to start a pilot project. And I don't know if you are familiar with Gaggle, but Gaggle is the company that we work with that monitors our student computer usage. So emails, Google Docs, just whatever they're sending, saving on the computers is monitored for certain trigger words. And so we get that data for all of our schools, and we use that data to determine which schools we would target for our project. Basically looking to see which of our kids were having the most Gaggle alerts per level. And so at that point last year, we decided that we would start with Ridgeview and Martin Luther King Jr. for our elementary schools, Wilson Middle School for the middle school level, and at the high school level, we decided to go with Davis. And so what we did is we started talking with the administrators at those schools and asked if they would be willing to partner in this project that we were working on with YPD. And so they all said yes, they would be happy to do that. And so we got to work on that. So what we found just within the month's time, we had 46 children that were on the notifications. Those are the emails that I get every morning along with Chad. 3 of those 46 kids were from our pilot schools, and there were a total of 20 YSD students in all of the notifications. And so we wanted to know what kind of impact these notifications were having on the schools on a day-to-day basis, because we wanted to look at going district-wide. So when we asked the administrators, they said that really it didn't take much time of their day, and they were actually quite happy to know which of their kids were having issues so that they could handle go and meet with those students and use trauma-informed practices to reach out to the kids when they would get to school. So, normally a kid would come to school and they might arrive in a mood, in a funk, but nobody really knows why. But if you know why, then you can actually go and, make a difference for those kids immediately and in a loving and trauma-informed way. So it would be a better way to start their day, as opposed to just trying to get the kid to get to class and get frustrated with them. So they were happy for this information. This is an example of the notifications that I send out to the schools every morning. And so we include a lot of information on the students so they know exactly which student we're talking about, but we don't tell them the details of the incident. So they know that something happened, but they don't necessarily know what happened. And we're not asking administrators or counselors to go and find those students and pull them aside and say, hey, I heard something really bad happened at your house last night. Do you want to tell me about it? This is really just a notification, just giving them a heads up. Something did happen the night before. This week, we actually had a student have an incident in their home at 4 a.m, and then she still had to go to school that day. So it just gives the school staff a heads up that something happened and to take care with that child. So maybe they're going to be in the nurse's office that day. Maybe they're supposed to be taking a test that day, but they're crying or their head is down. So it gives school staff just the knowledge that, this is a good day to kind of take it easy with this one and give them some space. If they want to talk, then, put them with the counselor, but don't push, and just be careful with this child. So after our first month of implementation, our pilot team decided that we were ready to bring this to the rest of the school administrators in our district. And so we met with them and shared the experience and the feedback. And because of the positive feedback from the pilot schools, the other 24 schools said that they were ready to get started on this project as well. So we brought them on board, and we started sending the notifications to all of the schools as the notifications came through for them. One of the things that did happen as well is after this first month, we were only notifying our schools which students were actually present at the time of the incident. But as I was looking in Skyward, you can see all of the other siblings that are connected with that child. And so what we started to do then was started adding in all the siblings. If they were actively enrolled in school, we also include all of the kids that are from that home. Because even if that child wasn't there when the incident happened, they're still impacted by the impact of whatever happened to the family. So we wanted to make sure everybody, all the children in the family, were connected with somebody at school for the incident. We also started adding in counselors, and some schools actually started adding in their nurses as well. Because if you've worked in a school or spent much time in a school, you know that kids that aren't feeling well emotionally will often end up in the nurses' room as well. So the nurses see a lot of our traumatized kids on a pretty regular basis. We also started adding Superintendent Trevor Green, our Assistant Superintendent Stacy Locke. We included Omar Santoy and his assistant Casey Mitchell because they are in charge of our counselors, so they needed to know which kids were being impacted. We also started including Shelby Lockhart. She is the Director of Student Achievement, and I'll talk a little bit more about why we wanted to include her in a minute. And then we also started adding our special ed directors, Joni Coe, Tammy, and Nancy. And today I started sending them to our health director, Amy Norton. So we're getting a lot of people involved with the notifications because they're in charge of departments that are impacted by these alerts. So the data that we learned, or that we gathered from this last school year, from August to July, was we had a little over 1,100 students that got the alert for our Yakima School District kids. Out of them, 489 were elementary, 261 middle, and 352. And all kids were 1,817 kids, but they're not all school district kids. So as Chad said, a lot of these kids aren't quite yet in school. So we might have kids ages 0 to actually 7, which sounds odd. But again, with the pandemic that we've experienced, a lot of kids, we're realizing, never started school. So they should have started when they were 5. But in looking through Skyward and finding, their older siblings, and then finding that we have a 7-year-old that lives in that home but never entered school, we're realizing we had a lot of kids that just never started. We also found that a lot of our kids had been in school previously but dropped out. So I can look in Skyward and see their attendance data and see when they stopped attending, and it was coinciding with COVID. So that was a big aha moment for us when we started to realize that we were having other issues that were popping up due to the work that we were doing. So like I said, we were seeing connections to attendance, which brought in Shelby Lockhart. So she's in charge of our student achievement. And she and I had been talking about the drop in attendance that we were seeing in our school district. And so we were trying to decide, how do we work on this project? How do we use the data we're finding? How do we get our kids back into school? And so we started doing some trainings with with school staffs on how to safely do home visits and, what kinds of things to talk to families about to get them realize, oh, I need to get my child back into school. So that was a conversation and some training that we started in August and then continuing into October. In January, we started a re-engagement task force. And so we were trying to meet pretty regularly with the school district people, YPD. We invited La Casa Hogar, Faith Community, YWCA, DCYF, city leaders, and people from Comprehensive. So we started those meetings, and then we realized, as Chad and I continued to talk and see our information, we realized that we were seeing a lot of kids on both lists that we needed to really target a little bit differently. So one of the ways that we connected on some kids was in May. I actually got a call probably about midnight from an officer wanting to know if I could help him find a family. There was a 16-year-old girl who had been admitted to the hospital for alcohol poisoning, and she had been with 5 other school-age students. So they had all been out drinking and were getting themselves into a lot of trouble. I recognized the names of 4 of those kids because of the work I had done previously in the schools. And so I knew a lot of the background. 2 of the kids were siblings, and they were being raised by grandma. And there were a lot of situations going on in that home that were not real healthy. Another set of siblings in the group were being raised by 2 different grandmas. Their parents had been incarcerated separately. They'd gotten back together, a lot of upheaval in their homes. The other 2 I didn't really know that well, but they were wrapped up with these other 4 kids. And so we knew things were not going real well for these kids. In checking with their schools and looking into Skyward into our data, you could see that a lot of these kids had been receiving supports within the schools. They'd had counseling, they'd had mentoring, they'd also had some police activity where they were getting themselves into trouble. All but one of the kids was regularly attending school. And so we realized through the notifications, just through the experiences, that these kids really needed a lot of supports. And not only did the kids need supports, but their families did as well. So Chad and I talked again. We were trying to get supports for our kids through whatever means necessary. So we set up a meeting. We actually held it here at our school district. And we asked DCYF that they would be willing to help bring these kids and their families on board and support them. But they said that none of them actually screened in. So they couldn't provide help for them. They did say that if the families called CPS, they could request voluntary services. But we knew that none of these families were going to call in and report themselves to CPS. Why would any struggling family call and say, hey, I'm not doing so great. Would you come help me? They're not going to do that. Thankfully, Chad had developed an initial relationship with Triumph Treatment Services here in Yakima, and it invited them, and also YWCA was at the meeting, and they agreed that they would help support in any way they could. Triumph Treatment Center not only provides treatment for drug and substance abuse, but they also have counseling services, which is really great. The YWCA has been in our domestic violence partnership and our coalition, and they provide a lot of supports for domestic violence victims. So they were happy to support us, and we were excited for their help. Through the schools, we called the families of the 6 kids, and the parents all said that they were interested in receiving supports, but they just weren't sure how to do that. So a couple of weeks ago, Maria Ayala, a gal from Triumph, she and I did some home visits. We were able to connect with all the families and just start the ball moving with these kids. And so one of the students that we went to go visit, she is actually attending school regularly. She's doing well. I've gotten another one of them ready to enroll in Open Doors. He's picked up all the paperwork and filled it out. And we're trying to get the other kids re-engaged with school as well. So had it not been for the Handle with Care, we probably would have missed these kids. And, out of the 1,800 kids, 6 doesn't seem like a whole lot, but it is a lot when we're talking about our kids and their future. So we are making impacts with our kids and with our families. Yakima administrators really have given a lot of positive feedback and a lot of, they want to continue this program. So I'll let you go ahead and read those yourselves. But we had feedback from all levels, elementary, middle, and high school, just being very very happy that they're getting the heads up, the notification. They know that they have families that are in need, and they know which ones to support most closely. So some of the lessons we learned is that the extreme needs of our kids may not have been even noticed or met if we hadn't had our Handle with Care program and the strong partnerships that we've been able to build over the past year. We also are seeing that our children are our responsibility. If we don't work together as a community, we're not going to be able to see the needs, meet the needs, and our kids are going to continue to struggle, unfortunately be non-productive, and they will continue to drain resources and make unsafe situations for themselves and their families, their communities, and even their future families and children. So if we can work together now to find solutions, we can help our kids learn the skills and strategies they need to improve their situations. And instead of being a burden, they can become a benefit and strength to our community. So that is our project, and we're here to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you. Does any member of the council have questions on these topics?
I do. Thank you. So it's wonderful. I know it's just, you feel like it's just a start, but it's an amazing start. My question is, so they've been out of school for 2.5 months now. 3 months. During that period of time, how do you follow up with Handle with Care or connecting people to resources from the police? Come across that.
Well, thankfully, what's happened in the development of the coalition, and since Handle with Care is directly tied to that, Sarah and I speak regularly, probably a couple of times a week, on some issue that she identifies, like she knows this family or this child, and then we'll go into talking about it. But what's developed, even though school's not in session, is this network of community service providers. And so, like Sarah had mentioned, like Triumph Treatment, DCYF, YWCA, Aspen Advocacy, whoever it may be, whoever is best suited to assist in that situation is generally who one of us will work with to make that introduction. So it's in essence, a warm handoff, if you will. We dealt with them at the police level. The school has become aware. Now we know what service provider to refer them to, and really try to make that connection on a person-to-person basis, because we're trying to get out of doing things electronically, and some of the families that we're working with really benefit from building a rapport and a relationship at the onset of an issue, and then hopefully it keeps them with the system much closer.
Thank you.
And we also continue sending the emails daily, even through the summer. So administrators can be connecting with their families and with their kids. They can ask their counselors to check in with particular students as well. So we keep the communication going. We did have summer school in some of our schools as well, so that helps.
Just push it once, right? I just have a question. Do you also get messages from the service providers, such as community health partners here in Yakima, going to you other than the police department?
We can get information from health, like nurses and doctors, but there has to be a release of information signed so that we can do that. But yeah, we can get that.
Okay. And I had another question. Is there a lot of impact within homelessness that also goes through the YPD and to the school district?
Oh, excuse me. One of the families actually today, their address was listed as Camp Hope. So I believe that they're recently moved there, because that address in Skyward is listed as something completely different. And so, one of the kids in particular from that family, I have seen that name multiple times this year through other sources. And so, these do have impacts on our kids for sure. Another family that came to mind about 2 weeks ago, I think, there's one young boy who I had worked with at an elementary school this last year, and he was exhibiting some substantial behaviors at school, in the playground, the classroom. And I saw his name on the Handle with Care notification. And so I followed up with Lieutenant Janice and one of his detectives, and learned that that particular home had had 12 DV incidents since 2020. So we're seeing big connections between the DV incidents and behaviors of our kids at school. So it does shed a lot of light on what's happening with our kids.
Yeah, and I would just pair that by saying we're in a position we'd like to expand to other first responders in our community. The original idea of the model is police, fire, EMS, anybody who's on that front line of the crisis can use the system. Currently, it's just YPD and YSD that are communicating, but we'd love to see the fire department, emergency service providers, anybody on that front line of crisis having a program like this where they can directly communicate with the school districts and say, these are the impacted persons within our community.
Is there any other question?
Any questions or comments from board members?
I have one comment. I was thrilled when I first heard of this program, I think through Sarah earlier on this year. I'm glad to see it continue. I think it's a really powerful thing to do. I have a couple of questions. Are there any potential barriers to long-term sustainability of this program, either financial or both of our organizations experience personnel change over time? So are there things in place to keep this program going for the long term?
I would say on our end, we really tried to create something that was sustainable. And so that is why we used a data system to where 10 years down the road, as long as we're using the same records management system, the officers are still going to put one code in, identify the child. It's going to create an email. It's going to be automatically sent every morning at 6:15 to whoever sits in my seat, whoever sits in Sarah's seat. And then the process with, as we envision it, just becomes more robust in time.
And there's really no cost involved except us doing the work. So whoever's in my position, which I hope to be here for quite some time, I think it's just a matter of being able to, maneuver around Skyward and find the names and then just send the emails out. We've tried to keep it pretty simple. So it's really just sending the data. But another thing that really is important is just really paying attention. So for instance, if I am not doing this work myself and I'm just looking back at it, I'm probably not going to be as aware of the kids that are on there. So the fact that I'm the one looking at the names and doing the sending of the emails, I think it keeps it very close. And so I'm able to recognize when certain names keep popping up so that I can have a conversation with Chad or, just moving on to the schools and saying, hey, what kinds of supports do you have in place for this student? I'm also able to work very closely with Omar and Casey from our student services and connect with them if we have certain things that seem to be especially alarming, and so that they can make sure that their counseling staff at those schools is well informed and able to act quickly.
You have another question, Norm? No. Okay. Dr. Green?
Thank you. This is a phenomenal example of a city and school district partnership that is sustainable. It is not only sustainable, but it has a deep impact on our community. I would like to commend both the city council and the school board for supporting such an initiative. Also then, thank you to those that are on the front lines, Chief Murray for supporting this. The effectiveness of what we do is only going to continue to increase over the years as we refine this. We know that on our end with the school district that there is still more that we can do with the information, but we can only move as fast as we can with the group that we have. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And we're bringing along our administrators, we're bringing along our staff, and it's making a tremendous difference. We had 101 new teachers come into our district, and during some of their training, I was present when one of our doctors were presenting. Dr. Jamie Johnson was talking about how to address issues with students, identify things that are happening in the classroom, and respond as a new teacher. And if you've ever been in front of a classroom of students, which maybe many of us have not, it can get pretty intimidating, and you're trying to manage so many different things at one time. And maybe the last thing that you're thinking about are the challenges that individual has experienced the night before. What I was able to do was stand in front of our teachers and let them know that as new personnel, it is a daunting task to stand in front of a classroom and then try to identify where those hot spots are, so to speak. But I was also able then to share with them that every day their administrator is getting an update of our Handle with Care individuals, and that they would contact them if they had one of those students, so that they knew that they could recognize and know that maybe there was one person or two people in their class that were experiencing some challenges, and it took that much more pressure off of them because they already knew that there was an issue and they already knew that they could reach out for support. So we know that as this continues to be refined over the coming years, it will only get better and better. We also, I know that there was a slide that identified faith-based partnerships. We have a very robust faith-based partnership, sharing this more for our city council. Every one of our schools is tied to one or more churches. And we do meet with them. I believe it's quarterly. Yes, Omar's nodding right there. And right on cue, perfect. And one of the things that when we shared the Handle with Care outcomes in the program with our faith-based community, they asked if they could know who the kids were. We have said no, that's not something that we can share. That's private, confidential information. But then they asked something that I hadn't expected. And from our faith-based community, they said, can we know the number of kids that are affected every day? Because we would like to pray for them. We would like to, as a community, send up a prayer for our students, and to know that there's people are interested in doing anything, and our faith-based community is coming together around our students as well, even though they don't know the names, but they do know the numbers. And we know that as this continues to go out in concentric circles into the community, that we'll see more opportunities, and look forward to being able to share those outcomes at a later date. And I have no doubt that the presentation today, it is getting play in our state, but I can see this certainly being a national presentation to certainly in the education community of what district-city partnerships can look like, and the great outcomes that happen when you put the right people in the right place and get out of their way and let them do their thing. So thank you to our two presenters here today, and Chief Murray, and to all of you for supporting this.
Thank you.
I want to thank Lieutenant Janice and Sarah for sharing this information with us today. Sarah made the comment, well, 6 out of 1,800 doesn't seem like you're making much of a difference. You made a difference for those 6.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the starfish story, you made a difference for the one. You make a difference for any. It's a big deal. And I just want to congratulate you both on the quality of the work that you're doing and the difference that you're making in the lives of these kids. And if we can get those other organizations on board, that'd be all the better. So thank you both for being here today.
Thank you.
Next on the council special meeting agenda is item 5, public comment. If anyone in the chambers would like to speak during public comment, please fill out a slip on the table in the back of the room and hand it to the city clerk. Public comments will be limited to 2.5 minutes per person and 15 minutes in total. Please identify yourself and the city you live in when you begin providing public comment. Do we have? Mm-hmm.
Public partnership.
Sir, if you'd like to have a seat and speak into the microphone, we could hear you better.
My numbers are a little bit different. Quite a bit different, as some of the council members would know. Some of the city's school district, I'm sure, last time I was in here, Chief Rizzi was here. And I went a little bit further back than that. I'm disappointed that my council member is not here, my representative. So if a kid goes to school, does he have a representative too? You guys ain't making sense to me. None. Staff is us, and then you put an E on the end. I'm not one to be used. I know what I give, and I know what I do. God bless. Behave, be safe.
Thank you, Mr. Corsi. Okay, with all of the business of this special meeting having been completed, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Madam Mayor, I move that we adjourn to our next City Council regular meeting, which is September 6, 2022, 5:30 PM in council chambers.
I second.
Okay, a motion has been made and seconded to adjourn today's special meeting. All those in favor say yes. Yes.
Yes.
All those opposed say no. Okay, the motion carries unanimously and we are adjourned.
And the Yakima School Board will be meeting next on September 12th at 4 PM in this building, in this room. So thank you all for joining us. Have safe travels going home this evening. And we are adjourned.
It was interesting.
It was.